I think with things like events that so many B2B brands are already invested in, already know where they're going to be, they know what they're going to sponsor. It's about extracting more value out of that event marketing strategy through the use of creative content and partnerships with the experts that are also going to be there.
Hey everyone, my guest today is Kristen Sesto from Custom Influence. Kristen has a wealth of experience when it comes to helping brands leverage influencer partnerships and getting the most out of their influencer marketing campaigns. If you're thinking about influencer marketing for your SaaS or B2B brand, this is an episode you don't want to miss. Also, I really appreciate your help in trying to grow my podcast and YouTube channel. So if you enjoyed this, hit that subscribe button below. All right, let's hop into the conversation with Kristen. Kristen, first question for you. Tell me something about you that most people don't know, and they're not going to see this on your LinkedIn profile.
At heart, I'm like a hippie. Maybe it comes through a little bit in LinkedIn here and there, but I think outside of work, I'm really into mindfulness, meditation, spiritual practice, overall wellness, and I'm on two journeys. I'm on my career journey, and then outside of that, I guess I'm on my spiritual wellness journey. And I think it's important to have those two things separate, but obviously a lot of things that I learned through meditation are the tools that I have with kind of staying present apply to work. And actually a lot of things that I learn in work and my career, I think about in that other part of my life. So I would say that's something people don't know.
When you said hippie, I didn't think of mindfulness or meditation. I imagine you driving one of those VW old classic buses, the little buses with a sunflower in your hair.
I think in a parallel universe, I am. Actually, really what I got into my career and moved over to London is I've loved traveling and I love seeing new places, meeting new people. And so maybe somewhere along the journey in the future will be me living my digital nomad life or something like that. But right now I'm very much in London and very much rooted here.
Yep. Except for the occasional Ibiza getaway, right?
Yes, exactly. Those happen once or twice a year. And actually in a few weeks, I'll have my next kind of break, which I think is really important.
All right. Good for you. Next question. The Academy Award for blank goes to Kristen. What is blank?
Perseverance, I would say. I will work at something until I can crack it. I think in all aspects of my life, don't give up easy.
Okay. Next one. I grew up in blank, and my favorite thing about that city is blank.
I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York. And my favorite thing about it is the perspective that you get growing up in a small town. And I think in many ways it made me sheltered from the wider world. But I think as a result, I was very fearless when I entered this I went to Florida for university, which was a bigger city. I lived in Tampa and then I moved here to London. And so feeling like that sense of safety that you have growing up in a small town, I think really helped me be bold when I did get out to the wider world.
Okay. All right. Last rapid fire for you. Blank is a food that my partner dislikes, but I like it.
Olives.
Okay. I don't like olives either, but my partner does.
Because I had to think about that for a minute because my partner likes almost everything. But yeah.
Okay, let's get into B2B influencer marketing. A lot of companies right now, they feel like that is a very hot space to play in. They want to do something with influencers. How do you help these brands understand where influencer marketing can fit within their, wider marketing objectives?
I would say the way that we immediately can help out and add value is taking a look at existing marketing channels, what they're already doing well, what they like doing, and then figuring out a creative proof of concept or test that can run alongside those channels or enhance them in some way. And so because we have worked to put together B2B influencer partnerships on almost every platform and across so many different industries, I think we have a very good sense relatively quickly of what is going to work. And so that strategy piece that I think is really important right now for such a new way to market to people, having ideas that we know how to execute adds a lot of value really quickly.
Okay, give us an example. Let's say a brand came to you and said, "Hey, we're killing it with these Facebook ads. We've tested dozens of ads, these ads with this value proposition have the best ROI for us. And how can we like take this even further to the next level with influencer help?"
So we might say in that instance, if it's paid ads, we might say, what does your creative look like and what's the creative strategy? And then looking at how potentially a thought leader or an industry expert could almost become that creative asset. So it's almost like this idea of UGC or user generated content for B2B that can be something really interesting to test. And because if somebody's already doing paid ads and a brand's already comfortable with that, again, you're not trying to have them reinvent the wheel to work with industry experts or influence as a task or in a new way. So that's probably what I would say is have the influencer become the creative asset.
Okay. And you said that you're working across all different channels. That includes X, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Anything else that I'm missing there?
Yeah, so I would say it's not just social channels. I think particularly in B2B or in B2C, a lot of ways that influencer marketing strategies are executed is that brands might say, okay, we just want to focus on TikTok and we want to activate a dozen influencers on that channel. In B2B, it might be because there's going to be less thought leaders overall for a particular industry or sector. Now, that's a generalization, but overall, let's say less people. And so what we would say is you probably want to work with less people on more channels. And that could also include things like independent newsletters that are supported either by LinkedIn, but also by other platforms like Substack or Beehive. So you include newsletters, and we also include some podcasts in there as well. I know you run a podcast network for B2B marketers. So it would be people like yourselves that we could put together partnership with the newsletter, and then just OG bloggers, industry bloggers that are independent. I think what we are focused on is finding an industry's independent voices wherever they are. So it could be beyond just social platforms.
Yeah. And it's getting harder and harder. There's a lot of podcasts that companies are putting out, brands are putting out, and they belong to the brand. They don't belong to the host. And I'm starting to see that more and more. Are you starting to see that in other platforms too?
Yes, we've seen it. We've seen it in podcasts. We've seen it in particular. I can remember one opportunity where the partnership actually couldn't go forward because the host was really influential, but at the heart of the podcast, it was a brand podcast, or it was the company's podcast. And so that's going to limit how independent that voice can really be. I think social platforms like LinkedIn, the person has more of they own that domain a little bit more. And most, events that we're seeing influencers or experts and thought leaders building their own communities and hosting their own events. But many industry events are still, most I would say, are ran by media companies and publishers that have moved into that space. But there's still creative ways to incorporate influencer or thought leadership partnerships. Probably podcasts is the biggest one where it's like who owns that space really.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you guys wrote a playbook on how brands can boost their existing channels, like paid ads, which you just talked about, but also content marketing and events through influencer and creator partnerships. I was wondering if you can give some examples.
Sure. So we did a partnership last week with a construction tech company, and this is in the event space. So I think a really good and one of the use cases we lay out in the playbook is how to work with industry influencers to enhance overall events. For this construction tech company, they were already sponsoring an event, but we paired them up with a content creator in the construction tech space, and he did a stop and chat style interview with the brand at their stand, and then shared that out to his network. He posted that on his YouTube channel. And so not only do you have that piece of content going out from the content creator's account, but you also then have the brand the brand gets that ability to have that content, slice it and dice it, repurpose it, and post that from their own organic social channels. So that's a good example recently of working with influencers in events.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. That is very ingenious, actually, because it looks so organic and natural. And it's not necessarily staged either, but at least the location or the booth that was already going to be there. So that's a good
Yeah,
example.
I think with things like events that so many B2B brands are already invested in, they already know where they're going to be, they know what they're going to sponsor. It's about extracting more value out of that event marketing strategy through the use of creative content and partnerships with the experts that are also going to be there. And
Yeah,
quite often, there's not any additional travel costs for a lot of these events because those thought leaders are going to be there anyway.
that's
So yeah,
right.
it's a no-brainer, really.
That is a no-brainer. I love that idea. Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, what are some like other fun campaigns that you got excited about and you're like, oh, this is really cool. I really like this.
So another one that we're doing right now that I think is just really, well, AI is obviously the topic that gets a lot of buzz in almost any B2B industry right now because it's just transforming the way that businesses operate. And so we are also running a brand campaign for a company that's in the manufacturing industry. And what they want to do is just raise awareness of the fact that they've had AI capabilities built into their product for a long time. They're not just jumping on a bandwagon. And so, what we're doing to raise awareness of those AI capabilities is we're putting together a series of partnerships with both podcasts as well as just individuals running LinkedIn Lives. And that brand has got their kind of resident AI expert that's going to be going on and doing that kind of roadshow to those 3 or 4 different people. And that is brand step storytelling, but with AI incorporated. And again, I wanted to highlight that because everyone's really focused on AI right now. It's really hard to differentiate. And quite often you need that person, that internal talent to speak to them. That internal person might not have their own huge platform of their own. And so again, that partnership with an industry expert gets the story out there and it just reaches new or more people that might be interested.
Yeah, yeah. The influencers you work with, do you find that you have to do a lot of training or coaching with them? I find that I have to do that with a lot of podcasters because they didn't create a podcast with the intent to becoming an influencer. And so I find myself having to do a lot of education around that. How is it with you and your experience?
It varies by industry and sector. I think part of the value that we provide as an agency is understanding what concept and what type of partnership is going to work for everybody and really getting that nailed down from the outset. And that's probably where the most education, it's at the beginning, is that education piece. Because when we're doing outreach on behalf of brands, quite often you're reaching out to somebody who's spent like literal decades building their career. And so we need to educate what we see as B2B influencer marketing. And a term that I use now more often is we're doing a social first thought leadership program because we want people to know that thought leaders to know that this is not that new, right? A lot of thought leaders, experts, voices in industry would always be on the conference circuit. They'd always be open to speaking opportunities. We're putting a social framework and social first partnerships together, but they're not, that's the biggest education is it's not that different than maybe a lot of the things that you've done before, or a lot of these same people would previously think nothing of giving a quote or contributing to industry trade press articles. And so, yeah, that's where the education is. In terms of the actual like ongoing sending content through for approval, collaborating with the brands, there's a lot less coaching or advice that we need to give once we've got the terms of the agreement in place. But it's really important to, from the outset, know what you're expecting of somebody and what exactly are they doing.
Okay. I guess before we leave here, what advice would you give to brands who are trying to do influencer marketing for the first time with B2B influencers? What's a first step that they should really focus on? if they're working with an agency or consultant?
No matter if you're doing agency, consultant, freelancer, in-house, what I would say is go back to what you're trying to achieve overall. So what's the goal? Does this tie to brand activity? Is it an share of voice, or is this more performance focused? Do you actually expect or want people to be doing something, or your audience to be taking some action? So getting that overall objective or goal down and where it currently aligns within the team is really important. And then, as we were discussing earlier on, just what channels, what stuff are you already doing where you think an influencer might be able to boost, enhance, or complement. Or if you're not doing something at all, for example, if you are a bit light on the content calendar, where are the gaps that an influencer could potentially fill? And that should be, those should be the two kind of starting points for how to structure a task that is going to give you some learnings. And I would also say that understand what the initial budget could be and focus on getting maybe not just performance, however you define that, but how can you learn from it? What are you trying to learn? Because with anything new, you don't want a situation where you test something, the test isn't really that well thought out, and then you immediately bin it off and be like, oh, it didn't work for us. So learn in the beginning. Learnings are arguably just as important as performance.
Totally agree. We recommend like minimum 4-week campaign using things like UTM custom links, but there's got to be a minimum number of weeks that you're in it if you want to get some kind of learnings.
Exactly. I would even say a couple months, and it doesn't have to be always on partnerships firing off or different parts of partnerships firing off every day, but you want a consistent program over a couple months that at the end of it, you can say, this is where we think this has moved the needle. This is where maybe we didn't measure something we should have measured. And yeah, just getting some real insight is important.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristen, for coming on the show. Where do you recommend that people learn more about you? And then also, should they go to the Custom Influence website to get that B2B playbook, or is there something else that you recommend?
I would say just follow me on LinkedIn. I post most things on there. Our B2B playbook is on our website. If you subscribe to updates on our website as well, you'll also get all of the other content and little nuggets of information we have to share. So yeah. Hope we do get some more people interested.
Yeah.
It's a growing space and it's really interesting. So I really enjoy writing and creating and sharing content on it.
Yeah. No, I enjoy seeing it too. I'll put links to Kristen's LinkedIn profile as well as her website at custominfluence.com in the show notes. For everybody listening, if you like this, hit subscribe, tell others about it, and I will see you next week. Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks.